evening. Welcome to This Happy Guru. My name is Kirsty Bentley-Taylor. Every week coming to you live at 9 p.m. This week I'm going to be discussing quite a big subject and one that I've really been feeling into this week. I have been trying to kind of build my business, take my life, my passion, my business, all of which I've amalgamated into one thing on a few steps over the last few weeks. And it's meant that I've had to really kind of dig deep into me, into myself, into facing a few of my fears, facing kind of a visibility fear that I had, facing another step forward. And although I've done a lot of this in the past, it always feels like kind of peeling back another layer of the onion. It kind of feels like opening up another part of myself. And with that opening, with that peeling back, there's a certain sense of vulnerability. And I've tended to kind of think into that a little bit too much in the past and found that I'm better off actually just waiting to see and looking out for what I call kind of signs from the universe that I'm on the right track, that I'm doing the right thing, that I'm on the right path. And much of my inspiration for most of the work that I do, including this show actually, usually comes from downloads, from gifts.
Humanity has been on an epic journey of discovery, learning the truth about the world we live in. New discoveries about the true origins of humanity, ancient history, free energy, as well as the systematic corruption of world governments are now on the forefront of our daily reality. Is the world headed towards destruction based on control and power? Or is an opportunity now being presented to shift and uplift into a higher consciousness? My name is Mel V, co-founder and creative director of Conscious Consumer Network, an independent broadcast network that was launched on the 1st of January 2015. In the last 3 years, Conscious Consumer Network has broadcast over 2,800 shows in multiple languages, featuring guests from across the world, whilst creating media that is aimed at the creation of a free, fair, peaceful, just, sustainable world. Conscious Consumer Network provides full training and an interactive support network for all broadcasters, and we are always looking for inspiring and educational content.
Hi, this is Lady Liberty.
And this is Mira Siegel.
In 2018, Conscious Consumer Network has expanded to multiple broadcast locations, increasing our availability and reach across the world, remaining on the cutting edge of independent media. If we wish to create a better world, we must first create better media, geared towards real education instead of indoctrination. You guys really are what changing the world is going to be about. It's educating kids at a grassroots level. Having become a pillar of stability in the turbulent world of independent media, we have even more going on in 2018. Conscious Consumer Network is a publicly funded network, and we rely on all of you to keep us on the air. Show your support for independent...
Good evening. Welcome to This Happy Guru. My name is Kirsty Bentley-Taylor. I'm coming to you live every Wednesday evening from 9 p.m. And today I'm going to be talking to you and with you about oneness. A subject that's been coming up to me over the last week or so, following a kind of a call from when I started building up my business. I've started moving further into myself, further into my passion, kind of taking a bigger step forward in my life. And when I do things like this, I tend to kind of ask the universe, look out for the universe for signs to see what it is that I'm kind of missing, stuff that helps guide me, stuff that helps support me going forward. Because, you know, every time I take a step forward, I feel like I'm kind of peeling off a layer, peeling off, you know, an old skin, if you like, transforming in that sense. And often there's a vulnerability that comes with that, you know, as there would when you peel off the skin on your hand and you reveal new skin. It takes a while just to kind of get hardened to the environment, you know. It can be damaged more easily. It tends to be a pinker color, you know, for me. And it takes a while to get into it, and there's certainly a fear for me that I have coming up a lot of the time when I take that big step forward. And so over the last few weeks, while I've been doing all this work, I've been looking quite into internally at myself. I've been really introspective, and looking at a lot of the fears, a lot of the things that are beginning to make me play small again, and where they're coming from, what it is that I need to shift. And I've been looking out for these kind of signs from the universe that I'm on the right path, things that, you know, are going to help support me along the way. And this week, I really was a little bit of a loss as to what I was going to be kind of talking about on this show, and what it was that I needed to feel from the universe to feel stronger. So these two things were jostling around in my mind the whole week. And I've kind of been feeling into them a little bit, and asking what it is that I need and what it is that I can then reflect back out, because that's how I tend to work. I tend to experience, accept, reflect, and give out, you know, and pass out. That's kind of the way that I see myself working. And so this week, quite by chance, I was given the subject of oneness. For myself, I believe, as much as to be able to discuss and to be able to talk about on the show, and indeed in my life and with my clients. And it's really been a beautiful subject to be reminded of. This is something that I kind of touched into a lot when I was doing my yoga teacher training. It was kind of that idea of consciousness, of conscious beings, of sentient beings. I changed my diet from my yoga from my yoga teacher training, as soon as I aligned myself with the idea that consciousness is not just solely for human beings. Sentience is not just something that we feel, you know, it's something that is expressed through the animal kingdom, through the insect world, through the bird world. You know, this is something that every living thing has. Through doing extra research on that, I found that, you know, things like flowers and plants will grow towards things that they see as being positive energy sources, and actually shrink away from those things that they don't, interestingly enough. You'd be able to see something as simple as this, as when you put a plant up against the windowsill and it grows towards the light. The light for a plant is a very epitome of love, if you like, you know, life-giving. It's kind of like, as we would look towards our mothers as children, so plants and flowers look towards the light as this source of giving, as this source of energy, this source of love, and this source of growth. And so they move gradually towards that source. And so for me, exploring oneness this week has taken me back into my yoga training, but has also opened up a whole new set of learnings for me, which is something that I just enjoy so much about my life, is that actually my interests and my work, my passion and my business are all amalgamated into one thing. So every time that I kind of look for something and it interests me, I learn a whole new load of other stuff that I can reflect back out to people and develop a perception of for myself, exposing myself out again, and kind of beginning to, like I say, peeling back another layer, another way of exposing myself, another truth, if you like, about the way I see things and the person that I am. And it's taken me into a real exploration of self over the last week. It's, you know, the last few weeks have been quite challenging for me in terms of kind of bringing it and not playing small where I don't need to. And now I feel like, from the messages that I've had, from the teachings that I've had, I can see that it's not even about taking a step so much as it's about more of an acceptance. And this is where this theory of oneness comes in. I've also been learning about the law of one, which I wasn't previously really aware of. And that came to me quite by chance. So I was watching, when I do the laundry, I like to kind of multitask and bring in something that's going to excite me rather than just make it feel like a mundane chore. And we've talked about this with meditations and stuff before. So when I'm kind of, you know, feeling happy and feeling very balanced anyway, I wouldn't necessarily go to a meditation whilst I'm doing the general chores. I go to something that's going to enlighten me, that's going to inspire me. And there's various different sources of that now. We're so lucky that we're so connected. And so I was looking on Gaia, which is kind of the Netflix. I like to think of it as a Netflix for sort of spiritual alternative thinkers. And I quite by chance, actually mistakenly, clicked on a program called Wisdom Teachings by a guy called David Wilcock. He's the presenter anyway. And it was called The Harvest of the Use of Harvest in the Law of One. And I clicked on it. I didn't even know why. You know when you just tap on your phone and it just goes, oh, there it is. But I'm not the sort of person that just thinks, oh, well, no, that's wrong. Go back. when something like that happens, and it's quite a random, spontaneous thing that happens, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is what I've been presented with, I tend to just go into it a little bit and see if it is something that I find would, I might find useful for myself. And it really opened my eyes. So it was talking about the use of the word harvest throughout the law of one. And I'd never even heard of the law of one before. And I was kind of like, what's that all about? I don't know what the law of one is. And so did a little bit of exploration before, I was 5 minutes in and I was not really understanding it, and did a little bit of exploration about what the law of one is. And the law of one is 5 books that have been written down that were originally channeled through 3 mediums, 3 clairsentients, if you like, through in the 1980s. So I think they were documented from 1981 between 1981 and 1984 through 3 different people. I've got their names: Carla Ruckert, I hope I've said that properly, Don Elkins, and Jim McCarty. And so these 5 books were written down and channeled through the publishers LL Research. So you can get these books online. You can buy all these books and research for yourself. But some of the stuff that was coming up to me was very much about oneness, and very much about this idea of the all-pervading fact that we are all one. Everything is all one, which is something that's been coming at me intimately through like loads of things that I've been doing, through my teaching, through my research, through workshops that I've done. And it's just been kind of dropping into me periodically over the last few months, in fact, in my conscious self, And so I kind of decided to explore that this week and go with what the law of one is. And it's fascinating. So the main person, or the main being, if you like, that speaks to these mediums throughout this channeling experience called himself Ra, which of course we would know as the god of the sun in Egyptian mythology, if you like, as Egyptian history. I like to think of it. And Ra was very much seen as an energy being associated with the sun and energy, life-giving, all those sorts of things. And through the work that I've been doing and the research that I've been doing, I haven't really delved into any more who or what or how Ra has come to being. So I'm not really going into that. More of the messages that he gave through to the mediums about oneness, about the power of one. So it says, I've printed it out, and as always, I've kind of made notes throughout where things have really hit home to me as I've been reading this. And this is all documented text. So it all kind of is, 1.0 and going through to 4.2 and, all these different parts of the text that we're reading, that I'm going to read out to you. So he talks about the confederation of planets in the service of the infinite creator. And the infinite creator being, I suppose, what we would call God or the universe or source, and with the knowledge that there is only one. So before we kind of carry on from there, let's just put aside any differences in religion, any differences in perception of what the pervading message is that seems to come across through all religions to me. Certainly there are lots of differences in the way people have perceived it. And I think that's the key, is that actually the differences in religion are really about how other people have perceived it. However, people have seen the message coming through or felt the message coming through their own experiences, through their own perceptions, through their own experiences of their lives and their journeys, and through their selves, the being that has experienced and has learnt and has been taught a certain way through a certain generation in a certain place at a certain time. And I think one of the things that I love about religion is the faith aspect of religion. And that is beautiful to me throughout every religion, that strength that you almost give yourself up to a belief. And I think that's almost the key to the belief of oneness. Oneness is essentially, imagine just close your eyes for a moment and imagine that you are the whole universe. It's hard to grasp, but imagine that you are completely without boundaries, completely without walls. You are ever, ever expansive. You are perfection and joy and bliss. in everything, irrespective of the perspective on that experience. Okay, and what I mean by that is it's really hard to recognize oneness when we have been conditioned through duality in almost everything. You know, we as human beings in this dimension and living in this lifetime now, and in fact in generations previous as well, of course, we have very much brought in an idea, a concept of duality throughout everything. And we've had it demonstrated to us as well. So it's not just this idea that we've kind of grabbed out of thin air and hung on to. This is something, duality is something that has been spoken about and talked about and discovered through science and discovered through philosophy and chemistry, the biology, you know, all these sorts of things. Even physics and quantum physics, to a certain extent, we get to a duality. We get to a level of duality. And it's only really been recently through science that we've been able to almost break apart that duality and see what is left. And so I'll go into that in a little bit further on. But imagine as well that we're talking about there never being any kind of a timeline, because time is something that, again, we've given ourselves. There is a kind of a natural state of time, if you like, of occurrence, of change throughout our lives, pervading through our lives, constant through our lives. And we needed to give that a structure, it seems to me. It seems to me that mankind needed to give change, the nature, the constancy of change, the consistency of change, a name and a way of being able to monitor it and hold on to it and feel like they had control over it. Okay, because obviously, you know, with change, there is always a certain amount of fear, like I've just explained for myself going forward, but that essentially is change. And there's always that fear. Whenever you make a change in your life, and I've discussed this on previous shows, whenever you think about making a change in your life, there is always that part of you that doesn't want it. You know, that would actually be a lot more comfortable holding on to whatever it is that you're doing right then and right there. And it's quite happy there, actually. But then there's the bigger, more pervading part of you that's saying, no, you need to go forward. You need to move. You need to grow. This change needs to happen for whatever it is. And I think one of the things that is inherent in oneness is that there is no time. There is no past. There is no future. There is only ever the now. And that now is eternal. It is forever. It's unbound. And it has no structure. There is no guide to it. It just is. It's kind of being in the most immediate sense of the word. Every second, if you like, you know, using a time constraint, something that we can understand because we're so used to trying to control the change that we're experiencing in every moment, every millisecond of every day. You know, just that 1 second, like a tiny little fraction of our lives, and yet such a massive scope for other parts of our body, like cellular death and cellular rebirth, you know, happen in milliseconds. They don't happen in seconds. A second is a long time for some parts of our universe. And so, it's that idea that everything cannot be bound by the rules that we have placed on it. And I think we accept that sort of thing when you think about the resonance of light, for example, the speed of sound, the speed of light, things that we couldn't necessarily understand wholeheartedly. There's a lot of things we just accept. And I think that's almost an acceptance of oneness as well. So imagine endless peace, endless harmony, endless acceptance. And it's all that is the oneness. All that is the idea, the concept of being right here in this moment, and this moment being forever in whatever time constraint you think of. We're thinking no fear, no inequality, no nothing, just being in this moment in bliss and accepting everything that's brought you to that and everything that will follow on from that. And that is a sense of oneness. And there are many different kind of ways of being able to get to oneness. I'm going to discuss a few practices that you can kind of have going forward. But I suppose one of the things that I'd like you all to think about initially is whether or not you've ever had an experience of oneness with things like it took my breath away, that moment of where you were neither in breath or out of breath. You just were held in that one moment, that kind of clarity, that peace, that joy, that intimate expression of realization, if you like, that you get when you look at something absolutely stunning, like maybe it's like a sunset or I don't know, some sort of vision like that, something that takes over you, that sort of experience that becomes you as much as you experience it, and really the boundaries of who you are and the thought processes of the ego and of who you believe you are and the perceptions that you have in your life and everything that you've created for yourself move away just for a millisecond, and so that you just are for that second. And that would be oneness. And the thing is, it's that it's taken my breath away. It's the idea of time stood still. That idea that you were there, but you weren't there at the same time. It's nothing that you can really define. And yet I would hasten a guess to think that many of us have experienced that, and probably not just once or twice in our life, probably a fair few times. By the time you get into your 40s, as I am, I know that I've had this experience through childhood. I know I've had this experience in my teens. I know that I've had this experience in my 20s, in my 30s. And I know that I've had this experience, in fact, in the last year. So I know that this is something that I get glimpses of all the time. Whether or not I can really put my finger on it, whether or not I can really emulate it for myself, is really down to, I think, the level of experience that I feel like I'm having as my identity, as myself, kind of getting a little bit otherworldly here, but it's that idea of coming out actually of the personification of this lifetime and really becoming suddenly at one with everything, where you aren't held by time, by space. You're not held by the constrictions of a physical body or an emotional self or an intellectual mind. It just all evaporates for a second or for a moment. And just for that moment, you just are. And even the awareness of that is not there. So you can sort of try to discuss and try to experience or share an experience, as I've tried to do then, but it really doesn't do it justice. I'm hoping that you'll be able to actually know what I'm talking about and be able to isolate almost a time in your memory and your experience that you've been able to feel that, and you can resonate with what I'm saying. So it's something that you can, having a direct experience of it, it's really only something that you can ever have. You can't really describe it. You can't learn it. You can't think into it. You just kind of have to have it to be able to feel it and to be able to know it and accept what it is. But once you've had that, I think it's quite hard to walk away from the knowledge of that. And yet that's almost what we're always looking for. Like through all the research that I've been doing over the last week and through everything that I've been reading and listening to, what has been coming through to me more than anything is, as I listen, I know that's been kind of quite an eye-opener for me. It's just like on some level of soul, of mind, of body, I know this. I know that I am finite on this earth in terms of my physicality. I know that my mind and my emotions are conditioned to a certain extent to think a certain way. But I also know that there is a part of me that will and has been here before, will go on again, has transcended dimensions, has had many, many different experiences, many of which actually I've talked about, through my shows on this network. And it's kind of all of that stuff as well gives me this idea of this sort of truth as to what oneness really is. And it's something that we have to go beyond the senses for. And that's one of the things that brings me back into kind of my yoga teacher training, because we do In the 8 limbs of yoga, which is the lifestyle that I choose to follow, one of the limbs is pratyahara, which is the withdrawal of senses. And this is really the beginning, I suppose, of practicing letting go of the physical world in order to take yourself into a more ethereal concept, a more ethereal place, a space outside of your physical body and actually in the wider realm of the universe and of consciousness and of this oneness. And so one of the things that you do in pratyahara is you begin to practice letting go of your senses, which of course are the parts of your body that are constantly reacting to things, that are constantly bringing in information and determining paths of decision and of behavior and of emotion. And I think, like, when you practice pratyahara, that was one of the hardest things for me as well, was being able to kind of switch off those senses and be able to just kind of focus inward, focus within first, because I do think that it's one of the first things that you need to do to be able to almost experience the outside, is to accept that outside inside. What I mean by that is, I suppose, once you've accepted yourself as being able to cut off from the ego, from the person, from the personality, from the physical self, from the psychological self, the psychic mind, and the emotions and everything that comes with that. Once you've begun to sort of cut off from that, what are you left with? You know, you're left with something. You're left with your consciousness. You're left with your pervading energy, your pervading knowledge that is connected still. There's still a level of connection there that you, even though you're not smelling anything, even though you're not hearing anything, even though you're not touching anything, you're not looking at anything, you're not even really sensing anything in that kind of sixth sense kind of way, where your energy is reaching out around you and engaging in other energies and feelings and that sort of thing that you get from what we call a sixth sense. There's actually your energy body just being able to reach out and touch and feel into other energies. And pratyahara is about reducing down all of those as much as you possibly can to be able to bring yourself into this finite level of consciousness. And then we move from that into dhyana, which is about then bringing yourself into a concentration on that consciousness and then about letting go of it. And that's kind of that's the way that we would train ourselves through yoga. So finding out about this kind of path to oneness and some of the practices that this Lord Ra, through the Lord of One, was passing down, and the messages that I've been, the teaching, that I've been learning through my yoga practice over the last 20 odd years, and really doing research on what common philosophy and I suppose some of the kind of the greater thinkers of our time have really said about oneness and what they've discovered and how they've perceived it, has been really eye-opening to me, because it's just, again, begin to kind of drop everything down and in, which, again, is one of the things that I just love about life. When you start to look, everything's out there, right? So just to give you some of the ideas, some of the sort of more famous quotes that I found about oneness from some amazing people. So one of the first ones was Albert Einstein, who, I mean, apart from his crazy hair and crazy look, so much truth from Albert Einstein. And again, stuff, sometimes I read his quotes and I just think like, oh, I so know that, you've literally articulated the things that I feel already. And he said, a person experiences life as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of consciousness. Our task must be to free ourselves from this self-imposed prison and through compassion find the reality of oneness. So that's Albert Einstein. Then we've got Swami Vivekananda, who was somebody that I studied actually when I was kind of doing my yoga teacher training. I read quite a lot of stuff from Swami Vivekananda, and a lot of the Swami stuff really, again, resonates home. It's a truth that, you read and you think, what, absolutely. Like, you've, again, articulated that so well. And he says all differences in this world are of degree and not of kind, because oneness is the secret of everything. And I think that's really empowering, to be able to understand and and accept that is really very empowering. All differences in this world of degree and not of kind. So everything is one thing. It's just how you see it. And it's just the degree of what you see it. We all see things differently. So some people, it's like levels of manners and stuff like that. Some people would be really, really upset, offended that you don't use please and thank you in conversation. Other people wouldn't even think about the word please and thank you in a certain situation. I recognize that learning languages, that some languages use pleasantries, if you like, manners, very much integrated, like English is one of them. We very much integrate please and thank you into our grammar and into the way that we speak. And we are very critical of other cultures and other languages that kind of don't do the same thing. We find it rude because it's so inherent in our language. And yet if you talk to, for example, in Hebrew, you're talking in Hebrew, or if you're talking in Arabic, if you're talking even in Spanish, like these are my experiences. There are ways of saying things which are polite, but there aren't the niceties, the manners, if you like, of a certain please at the end of every sentence, a certain thank you at the end of any sentence. I know with Thai, again, they tend to almost bless everything that they say with gratitude, which comes from the masculine and feminine words, which is like almost a blessing at the end of everything that they ask or say. So, to say thank you, there's a feminine for ka, and masculine for cup. So you would put your hands together and say kapkun ka. So kapkun is thank you, and then ka is like almost a blessing that the feminine would give, and cup would be the blessing that the masculine would give. And so that again is a formal way of being polite, of being respectful, and that come through all manner of their conversation. And it's really a lovely thing, when you're speaking to somebody and you can hear that ka or that cup coming at the end of everything. It's a genuine level of respect for the person that they're talking to, and it, again, it's kind of a nicety or a way of expressing manners and respect through language that is inherent in their culture, but it's not so in every culture. And so it's just always about level of perception and what it is that you see. And so I think Swami has really touched on something there, that it's also about the experience that you're having as a soul in this lifetime, as to what it is that you perceive and how it is that you can separate yourself, and to what degrees of separation, I suppose, there are. So one of the other quotes that I got, I'm not sure who this is from, but it talks about like energy. And as I spoke about going to a Bruce Lipton workshop a few weeks ago now, we were talking about energy, and he dissected the atom. Growing up throughout school, I was kind of taught that the atom was, the source of all matter. Everything was made out of atomic force, and it was basically this kind of little hydrogen bomb in a tiny little molecule. And then since I was at school, 20, 30 odd years ago, we've now opened up the atom and discovered that inside the atom, there are two polar forces of energy constantly moving around. And then inside the polar forces of energy that are constantly moving around and generating this force, there is nothing. There's nothing. There is consciousness, essentially. There is this energy. There is this knowing. There is this source of information. There is consciousness. There is oneness. And so it says, this quote was, energy cannot be created or destroyed. It is one. Within the one life, nothing can be lost or gained when this is seen. The doors of infinite abundance that were once unknown are now open. So I love that, because that basically says and tells us that through everything that we see, that we feel, everything is consciousness. And this is kind of quantum physics stuff. Again, quantum physics thus reveals a basic oneness of the universe. The idea that inside everything there is nothing scientifically proves that it's consciousness that is driving the universe. That's everything, no matter whether you can see it or whether you can just feel it or whether you just know it. It's all consciousness. Everything that we see. And we talk about like the Matrix physics and this being a kind of a construct of a world. And I think that's a great visual to be able to identify with. But I also love the idea that if you let go of everything, then, you know, like if you let go, when I mean you let go of everything, if you let go of every belief, every idea, every construct that you've come to see and know as being your reality, actually you take a step into the real, into the truth. And I really love that idea. And this is the kind of idea that's been growing with me over the last week. It's been kind of circling around in my mind and in my consciousness, I suppose. And it's enabled me to kind of do a lot more research and a lot more thinking into critical thought over what it is that I perceive myself, and again what it is that's holding me back in going forward then. Because if I can really believe that oneness, that all consciousness is just one thing, and that everything that I am experiencing is one thing, then I'm accepting consciousness, but I'm also accepting that my growth is inherently part of a growing consciousness, an evolving consciousness. And that's really an exciting thing as well. It's also, it brings home to me that my own personal growth, if you like, the thing that I see as my own personal growth, is actually something that we're all doing, but also something that is inherently needed for everybody, for everything, for all consciousness, or for the whole universe to be able to move forward. Because if everything is as one, then every experience, every form of growth, every move of energy, if you like, which is essentially growing, growth is movement. So every shift, every movement, every tiny little ripple that extends out is affecting everything. And bring that home and in again to yourself. And that means that everything that you do is creating this ripple effect, and that you're beginning to change the world, and not just this world, but in fact the entire universe. Everything that we know, everything that we don't know, you are actually able to affect that. It's kind of mind-blowing when you get your head around that sort of expansive thought. But there's a sense of comfort in it for me as well. When I'm facing my fears, when I'm feeling challenged, when I'm worrying, because essentially fear for me is about worrying what's going to happen next. Those are the fears that I'm, strip them all down. I could be very finite about them, but to strip them all down, it's what will the future hold? It's what's going to happen next. It's what will this change bring? Am I ready for it? Am I able, am I able to cope with it? And then if you take away all the ego in that, and all the sense of personality, and all the sense of who I think I am, and I accept my part in the oneness of everything, then really it matters not, because I'm only giving back almost to myself. And so as long as I can unconditionally love myself, it really doesn't matter what I give out, because it will be received. It will be received back. And that is, again, that continuum of movement, that cyclic movement that we need to keep going on this path, to keep consciousness moving forward. So, get my notes. So as I was going through like some of the research and the things that I was doing on oneness, I came across like the Vedantic term for oneness, which is tat. So tat in the Vedantic text basically just means that. And that was interesting to me as well, because I was listening to the Moses Code. This is one of the things I was doing in the bath the other day. So I like to kind of listen to random things. I usually do a search on YouTube, and we'll listen to something, maybe a meditation or something like that. And one of my favorite meditations is actually one that Dr. Wayne Dyer gave it, which is it's called I Am That I Am. If you can look it up on YouTube, it's a beautiful meditation. I am that I am. It comes from the words in the Moses Code being broken down into symbolic sounds and made into and resonated through as a musical resonation of the word of God. And it's beautiful. Like, these sounds are really, they're gorgeous. And I love to just kind of lie in the bath, candles on, and just let these sounds sort of permeate around me and through me, and just really relax. I take it deep with my breathing, and just really begin to let go. But for some reason, again, this week I'm searching in for that, and all these kind of titles come up, and I hit on a whole hour's worth of talking about the Moses Code and the I am that I am, and where that comes from. And so it was interesting to me to find out that the word tat in Vedanta, which is obviously, thousands, it predates the Bible by thousands of years. It talks about that. And then again, in the Moses Code, we're talking about when Moses comes across the burning bush. I'm sure many of you have heard that story. When Moses comes across the burning bush and he's asked by the burning bush to save the Israelites and to take them through to the promised land. And he says, but how can I tell them? Who should I say that this is coming from? How can I express that I've seen all this? What is your name? What do you call yourself? And God comes through then as I am that I am. And that struck me as like, okay, so that's that word again. It's that word again. The word that. That's interesting to me. So why that? Because that is here and there at the same time. It's interesting to me that the definition, if you like, that has been passed through religion is that God is everywhere, and that in itself is basically what we're talking about with oneness. There was a discussion that if you put a comma after the word that, it became even more symbolic, because actually it's everywhere then that you look. It's everywhere that, everything that you perceive, everything that you draw in with your senses. God is that. The universe is that. Source is that. Whatever it is, however it is that you choose to resonate with the all higher consciousness, the oneness that I'm talking about. It is that. And so the idea is that you kind of, I am that I am. So the idea that I am that being, I am everything. And then the resonance, the definite resonance of calling it back into self, again, keeping that cyclic move it going. I am, that resonance that keeps that moving. I am that I am. I am that I am. And there are certain meditations that you can do through those where as you speak out, you say, I am that, and you call into your life something that you would like, something that you want, being able to manifest through that name, through that word of God, and through that acceptance of oneness, knowing that as you call out for something, as you ask for something, so immediate, you open up to be receiving of that. So you could interchange that in a meditation for yourself of I am abundance, I am. For example, I am perfect health, I am. And it comes back in towards one another. Again, creating that cycle, creating that movement, creating that idea of putting out and it coming back to you, which is really the idea of oneness and a higher consciousness, and this one pervading idea that the universe, everything that we know and everything, even those things that we don't know, we're constantly exploring, are an expression of self. That to put out brings back in. It's that cyclic movement still. So I really like that idea. So that was something that came out to me about the oneness, and through history, how it's been explained and how it's been expressed. Quantum physics talks about a unified field, so which underlies and connects everything in creation. So who we are is pure consciousness or oneness, expressing itself in different forms at different times in our evolution. So quantum physics talks about everything being like one field, one expanse. It's the same thing as a consciousness, but quantum physics has quantified that, excuse the expression, but quantified that through delving into the nature of atomic power. What is atomic power? What does it really break down to? And as I've said, now that we've kind of split the atom and we've gone into it and we find out that it's kind of these energy sources, but that they polarize around another finite source of something, and what is inside that, split that open, and what we find is that there is nothing, that there is only knowledge, that there is only consciousness inside that. Everything, again, must be made of consciousness by the same rules that make everything made of tiny, minute atoms. So we begin to explore the fact that actually inside that is nothing. And then you try and get your head around the fact that, okay, so everything that I'm seeing is really only a form of consciousness. And we've discussed this before, where actually everything that we see has been manifest through thought, and thought coming from consciousness. So everything that I look at has at some point come from a thought. And that is the nature of the universe. And that thought comes from something. What does it come from? It comes from consciousness. And so whether or not you are, an animal, whether you are a plant, whether you are a human being, whether you are, anything really, like a force of energy, like the wind or the sea, you manifest from an original thought, and you would begin to continue to grow through that original thought. I hope that makes sense. So that we're still moving. You see, that cycle is still moving. I was talking to my daughter, actually. She brought home a book. She's, doing a reading, and we're sitting there reading last night. And we were reading all about tsunamis and earthquakes. And she's been talking about school tectonic plates all around the world, and, on our Earth, how it makes it up, and how these plates are constantly moving and constantly shifting. And in fact, that there's thousands and thousands of shifts, minor tectonic plate shifts throughout the year. And often we don't hear about them when we don't feel them. They're so minor, they're so kind of minute a shift that they just don't even affect our consciousness on Earth. And it's only when they get to be big that we have the repercussions of those conscious movements, if you like, because the Earth is a living thing. That's something else that we need to kind of remember and bring into this, is that the Earth is a living thing, that the Earth that we live on, it has a center, it has an energy center that we know, the epicenter of the Earth. It has an energy center. The energy permeates out and through and resonates through in different levels. And on the very outside of this Earth, living on this conscious being, here we are, conscious sentient beings. And we're not the only ones. And the fact that we share it all with so many other things is, for me, an expression of the consciousness of the planet, the consciousness of the Earth. And that when that shifts, that consciousness, we feel it. When something needs to shift, we feel it. And so whether that be through the millennia of history that we've managed to document so far through, through science and through exploration and through being able to graph and chart different ways, timelines onto things, we realize that the Earth herself has a history that goes far, far beyond anything that mankind has experienced. And that, there are life forms that have lived on this planet for millions of years quite happily in that life cycle of their life cycle on this Earth. And it's, that in itself is just, again, for me, an expression of the oneness, of the fact that it's constantly moving. It is without space and time. It is without we want to put a timeline on it, but it's past all that. We're talking about something that we really can't document in time. We're pinpointing moments in our timeline, a line that we've created to be able to understand an entity that can never be defined by time, and an entity that is always changing and that is always manifest by its own design. So it really, the timelines that we put on things are really for our own benefit, so that we can bring some level of ego and understanding into something that we are trying to almost fight with, this idea of duality. We're almost trying to fight the one thing that we need to accept, which is our unity, which is our oneness, which is the wholeness of everything that we are, that we've been, that we continue and will continue to be. And recognize that whatever it is that we're expressing in this lifetime, in this tiny little minute speck of time that we're living in right now, is really as important as everything that has come before us, and that everything that will go or come after us. And again, we don't think of past and future, because that again is a timescape that we've given to ourselves, trying to define, trying to align ourselves with a certain logic, a certain order, as a case of duality. and a case of being able to kind of understand duality a lot easier than we can understand oneness. And it's kind of a little bit, for me, like duality is a little bit like, again, splitting the atom. We finally begin to understand what an atom is, and we're like, wow, the power of the atom. And then we split the atom and we're like, whoa, you know, the atom is two as well. And then when you actually kind of look at them, what is inside those two pieces, or the two energetic forces, and you come to face with the oneness of it all, then there is nothing else. There is only the oneness. And that's kind of, you know, that's the reality. That's the lesson that it is, that we all need to be listening to and accepting through our hearts, through our experiences, and also being able to let go of the duality that we've created and that we align ourselves with, because it's almost easier to accept that through, because I think some of the hard stuff with this comes when you look at the bad stuff that happens in the world. You know, that's certainly where I get a little bit unstuck. Like, I can definitely align myself with joy and bliss and wonder and enlightenment and the amazing, beautiful things in the world. I recognize that, you know, when I laugh, you know, that transcends, and other people will laugh with me, and that energy moves, and that I recognize. But when I see some of the really horrible, awful things that happen in the world, there's a sense of distancing myself. There's a sense of me wanting to distance myself, almost needing to distance myself from that side of the world that I find it hard to align with, I suppose. I find my own personality, my ego, the personality, the identity that I'm portraying in this lifetime as a human being in this dimension right now. I find it very, very hard to align myself and to be able to accept oneness with people who, you know, who commit heinous crimes, and with that side of humanity that creates, like, constantly creates war, creates hate, creates distrust, you know, and everything, you know, all of those things that I abhor about humanity. If I really want to accept oneness, then I have to accept that all that is part of the oneness, and that in effect, it's not, there is no duality. It's a level of perfection. It's something that we need for the growth. That's kind of how I've got my head around it. So I started kind of looking at and thinking, you know, okay, so if I'm going to accept this idea of oneness, I have to accept that inside me is the same things that are inside some of the worst examples of humanity that I've ever read about or that I've ever come across. And I know, you know, I remember back to times when I've read things in the paper or I've watched things on the news, and my heart has felt like it's going to break, and it's gone so heavy. And it you know, because I'm looking at these things, I'm looking at these experiences that people are having, and I just feel so sorry. I feel such pain for mankind that we are having to experience this on whatever level. And yet when I was listening to a YouTube video, I think it was about oneness and about you know, what oneness really is, it was put forward that actually you need, you know, if oneness is conscious thought, and conscious thought is constantly trying to evolve and to grow itself and to move itself on, then there has to be triggers for that catalyst. There have to be experiences and knowledge and something that incites that growth to be able to allow that to happen, right? And essentially that's what we are then doing within ourselves, within our lives. Life then is this constant growth of consciousness designed to push on our consciousness. It's, you know, the consciousness itself designed to enable it to grow. And so consciousness is this amazing, huge world thing, like the source, the universe, higher consciousness, the, you know, God, if you like. If God is looking to express and realize itself, then there needs to be catalysts for growth in there. And, you know, even some of the hardest times that we go through always incite growth. some of the hardest challenges that we come across as human beings incite change, incite movement, incite a reaction. They are the catalysts that bring the world into a higher state of being. And we can tell this through the development of consciousness through the last 100 years. You know, we can go back even longer. But we know that in the last 100 years, we have had so many different things happen, so many different catalysts for growth happen, not just through, you know, good things as well as bad things. You know, in the insight of science on, you know, our planet, and really the growth of that, various political decisions that have happened, various scientific discoveries, and, you know, the ability now, for example, to be able to communicate with people on the other side of this planet instantly, through, you know, the magic of technology. I mean, I still don't understand it. I stick with the stuff that resonates with me, and I leave all that complicated stuff to people who are enabling and growing and pushing that forward as well through their own conscious development of that. And that's the importance of all of us, right? The fact that we've all come in with a journey, with a path, with an ability to be catalysts and create a catalyst, whether it be small or large, it doesn't really matter. We're all 100%, you know, 1,000% needed to be able to keep the momentum of conscious growth, of higher consciousness ability to accept and realize itself moving on forward. It's a big one to get your head around, you know, but if we're all part of that, then we have to also accept the good parts as well as the bad parts. You know, to be able to accept oneness, you have to accept that inside you, there is a part of you that would kill or could kill if you'd had the same experiences as that other people have had. And I know that's hard to resonate with. I know you're kind of sitting there thinking, I could never. But you have to accept that if you're going to accept the idea of oneness. And if you're going to, you know, working back from that, accepting the idea of oneness means that you accept that you are part of a higher consciousness. If you accept that you are part of a higher consciousness, you have to accept your own part in that, which is to be a conscious being. And if you accept that you're a conscious being, you have to recognize that as a conscious being, you are experiencing a life. You are your own catalyst for the growth in that life, and that you manifest everything that you need to be able to grow as that conscious being. So everything that you need to experience in life, you bring into yourself. You know, this is kind of, I suppose, where the law of attraction comes in, the law of cause and effect comes in, which I've, again, discussed in previous shows, these fundamental laws of the universe. And then we've got the law of one. Let's just touch back in on that a little bit, because that was fascinating to me. So this is kind of the stuff that these guys have been channeling through. Some of the stuff that they talk about, a confederation, which I imagine to be, you know, again, a group of almost higher conscious beings trying to enable consciousness to grow even further. That's kind of almost their remit. That's their, you know, they are the catalysts for their own growth and for the growth, the higher growth of the universe from their level. And it talks about, so they talk about questions that are being asked to them, and that we're talking about that which is infinite cannot be many, for manyness is a finite concept. So again, that's taking yourself out of the individuality that you experience in a day-to-day life and taking yourself into a level of being able to accept that actually everything that you're going through is everything is going through. To have infinity, you must identify or define that infinity as unity. Okay, otherwise the term does not have any relevance or meaning. An infinite creator, there is, in an infinite creator, there is only unity. So that's kind of bringing it all together as this higher consciousness, unifying itself, you know, and interestingly, again, to me, like, the word yoga is unity, is yoking, is to bring together, is to unite everything. So your, you know, your physical body, your breath, you know, your energy breath, your pranic energy, which is expressed through the breath, your psychic self, your emotional self, every part of that is bringing together, is uniting, is unifying. But it says, so we're talking about also that as being almost the idea of yoga and looking at yourself as parts as almost being the catalyst to recognizing the oneness as well. That, you know, you can't almost define yourselves, that we get caught up with defining ourselves through our psychical selves, through our emotional selves, through our physical selves, and that actually transcending all of that is the oneness, is samadhi, which is essentially what the eightfold yogic path takes you through to, this idea of samadhi, this idea of contemplation. And contemplation, of course, is just recognizing. You know, contemplation is not judging. It's not having a certain thought process on something. It is just almost recognizing, allowing, and being without judgment, without thought, without criticism, without anything, without even engagement. It just, it allows, it recognizes, and it allows and enables. So it says the distortion is not in any case necessary. So it's talking about distortion of mind, body, and spirit. Okay. It is chosen by each of you and is an alternative to understanding the complete unity of thought which binds all things. So again, it's because we can identify so much with the feelings that we have and the physicality that we have and everything that we're experiencing in this lifetime. And we're meant to have that experience. You know, we wouldn't have been given this vessel to take our journey in. We wouldn't have been given the facet of emotions and the ability to feel and experience if it wasn't absolutely inherent and necessary within our growth. However, it's a distraction to us. It's like the biggest challenge. It's kind of like, as I say, that kind of next layer that we need to pull off as humanity. So it says, and then to remember that you are everything, every being, every emotion, every event, every situation. You are unity. You are infinity. You are love and light or love. You are. This is the law of one. So that the law of one is really just recognizing that inherent space that you are a part of, that is everything, and that you are. And again, it's a big one. It's a massive concept. It's like closing your eyes. And you know, I think that's one of the things I kind of like about meditations. When you close your eyes, actually everything that you can see out there as being matter disappears, and you know it's still there, but you just can't see it. You know, it's no longer there in a certain sense in terms of your own conscious thought. You know, physically it's there, but when you close your eyes, it still is there, but it's not manifest in sight. It's not manifest through vision. It's just a kind of a knowledge that it's there. It's kind of, yeah, I hope I'm explaining myself. It's a hard one to get your head around, I think, especially when we, like I say, all, like from the word go, we're all conditioned to believe that, you know, you've got to be a good person. Again, brings us into the self. You know, you should behave like this. Again, brings us into ourself, our emotions and our physical and our psychical selves. You know, success is this, and it tends to be money orientated. It tends to be you know, orientated by manifestation of things. You know, it doesn't tend to be, success would not be deemed, for example, of being able to just let go of everything, including life. That would, you know, as we know it, that wouldn't be deemed a success. However, if you accept yourself as a part of the oneness, and that oneness is not a construct of space or time, in fact, it transcends that, it moves past that, and it just is, then really there is no fear of losing anything, because nothing can ever be lost, right? So going back to these questions, it says to reach an undistorted understanding of the law of one, it's not necessary to heal or indeed to show any manifestation, but only to exercise the disciplines of understanding. And by the disciplines of understanding, I think they're talking about this unity, this sense of oneness, right? And that for me, again, is kind of like the beginning of this, you know, it's to exercise the disciplines of understanding. It's to live in the path towards unity. It's to know that the only way of ever getting there is holding fast to the daily discipline, the constant discipline, the knowledge that this is the only way, that this is the only way to take yourself forward, and to just allow and be that without struggle, without fear, without questioning, without any of those things that we've given ourselves as, as humankind. And that was again where I kind of resonated in with like the eight paths of yoga. You've got the yamas and the niyamas, which talk about your sense of being, which talk about the way that you should be towards other people, and also the way that you treat yourself. Again, that kind of going out and coming back in again, going out and coming back in again, that whole cycle that carries on through. One of the other things that I kind of highlighted as being, really sort of super interesting to me, it says that the law of one, within the law of one, all things are one, that there is no polarity, no right or wrong, no disharmony, but only identity. And like I said, it's hard to believe that sometimes, when you hear all these god awful things on the news, and you just can't align with the cruelty of mankind, with the idea of war, all those sorts of things, or those are sorts of things that always touch me, and I always really struggle to kind of feel like I'm still part of this. I've got to be part of this by the nature of everything I know. I need to accept my part in this. I find that really hard. But at the same time, there are, obviously I'm not a perfect person in any stretch of the means. Like, I have loads of imperfections that I'm constantly working on. But I think that in itself, those imperfections that it had give me a knowledge as to the fact that, okay, so if I'm imperfect, then there are going to be different kind of gradients of imperfection that bring on different cycles of growth, because that must be how it, how it works. It's what I almost see in everything else around me, that there are almost different gradients of growth, because there have to be, because there are so many different facets of expression of the oneness, to be able to express and expand on the oneness, to be able to create the growth, to be able to incite the movement, to be able to move forward and rise and to elevate and to keep that kind of that energy going. So that was, that again, that's the hardest part for me, I think, being able to accept the bad side, if you like, the negative side, if you like. And we're being told that there's nothing negative, that there's nothing bad. It just is. This is the way it is. This is the way it needs to be able to function, to be able to work, to be able to be. And that's, it's not anything that we're used to dealing with on any other level. This just acceptance of now, and now being forever and gone in the same time. So one of the primal distortions of the law of one is that of healing. Healing occurs when a mind-body-spirit complex realizes, so I think that's us, mind-body-spirit complex, realizes deep within itself the law of one. That is, that there is no disharmony, no imperfection, that all is complete and whole and perfect. Thus, the intelligent infinity within this mind-body-spirit complex, like within us, the intelligent infinity within ourselves, reforms the illusion of body, mind, or spirit to form congruent with the law of one. The healer acts as energizer or catalyst for this completely individual process. So we bring in whatever it is that we need to grow. We bring in whatever it is that our lifetime needs to be able to be the expression that, as a part of the oneness or as a whole of the oneness, we need to express. I think it's that constant idea that, you're putting out, you're bringing in, you're putting out, you're bringing in. And again, it's that asking, the idea of creative thought. When you think about it, it's that asking. The first thing that you're aware of is that there is a need for something, right? And it's almost a question: is there that need? Yes, there's that need. Is there that want? Yes, there's that want. And that's, so it's going out and it's coming back in again. And that's the nature of conscious growth and thought development, in fact. So it says one item which may be of interest is that a healer asking to learn must take the distortion understood as responsibility for that ask, or for that receiving, that reception, thus enabling to heal. So this is an honor or duty which must be carefully considered in free will before the asking. Now, so I think this is about the negative sort of stuff. Like, we often will say to ourselves, well, why did I get that? Why did I deserve that? What did I do to deserve that? And there's a truth behind that, almost, in the terms of being able to learn from what it is that you've brought in, what you've manifest, what it was that you asked for, and becoming very, very specific with the universe about what it is that you asked for, because it can be a case that you ask for something and it comes back at you, and it wasn't exactly what you meant, but it's exactly what you asked for. And I think that's, it's the idea that upon learning, you must be open to receiving in, for the one thing, but receiving in any form, with a faith that healing will be given, even if it feels like you need to be hurt or brought down, or any of those sort of destructive forces, before you receive the healing, before you get the lesson, before you understand what it's kind of all about. And so, yeah, that was kind of something quite interesting and exciting to me. Then I want to talk about, like, the ways that we can express and achieve a sense of oneness and achieve that sense of understanding. So I went through, a lot of the information that I researched, and just began to print off a few ideas. But then what came to me was the correlation between the documents that this, Ra, this energy being, I'm going to call him, this universal being, was channeling down through, and some of the stuff that we already kind of know about as being human beings, is how you can accept your oneness, and how you can develop that as well. So let me just get it all out. So one of the first things was, that I sort of came to me, I suppose, was community, was being able to accept your part in the greater whole. And I feel like with the increased use of digital technology, mobile phones and computers and all that sort of thing, we're actually beginning to lose our community and our connection with one another. The irony of it is that we've never been so connected. Like I said earlier, you can contact somebody on the other side of the world in milliseconds and be talking to them and be dealing with them, and being able to have a real relationship with these people. And yet you have lost a certain sense of community and sort of sense of connection within that as well. And so anything community based is going to be about getting out and accepting into your world. Start almost locally and move out, right? So being part of a harmonious community helps to foster the principles of oneness. And you can do this through a lot of different ways. You can do this through, local groups, school groups, being able to be a regular part of your community, like somebody that other people know. But you can also do this by building up a tribe, people that resonate with what you're saying online, or through a medium, or through whatever, social networking, that sort of stuff. But fostering that community and being able to really support and serve others through that community. And that's what I mean by community. I'm not talking about pitching out, I'm not talking about selling to people, I'm not talking about building a business or anything. I'm talking about giving out to people. That is kind of you being present in a community, is being able to give out to people and therefore be able to receive, because there's always that feedback, there's always that stuff that comes next. Excuse me. So community helps us to open up to new and different ideas. It begins to dissolve our barriers and our limiting beliefs, because the more people that we experience in our lives, the more cultures that we experience, the more strange and weird and wonderful things that we experience, the more open our minds become. And I suppose the more we begin to shift some of the limiting belief systems that come into our lives as children, that we were given to sort of protect ourselves, to align ourselves in with the tribe that we've been born into, or all that sort of stuff. Community can connect us with a sense of oneness, because you have to be tolerant, you have to be accepting, you have to be open, you have to be at one. with other people to be able to accept your part in that oneness. So community is something that you can do. So you can get out there, you can get involved in communities. You can really invite yourself and other people into a space that is a communal space. So you can do that through like group meditation, opening up your house and saying, like, if anybody would like to meditate, please come and join me here. Maybe as it gets bigger, you might need to kind of all chip in and hire a hall or something, but you can do a group meditation. Oh, excuse me. You can do a group meditation quite easily for those people around you that feel like they would like to do that, and that they would like to be involved in something like that. That would be, a really fantastic community way of being able to engage in a sense of energy, in a sense of oneness, in a like-minded thought within your community. The next thing was meditation. So again, like I've sort of briefly gone over through the 8 paths, the 8 limbs of yoga. We talk about being able to work towards meditation. With the idea that once in a meditative state, you can then work through that as well. So we talk about the concept of pratyahara, which is distancing yourself from your senses, from the physical aspect of self that is constantly looking for and bringing in information. And then we disconnect from that through, concentrating in, not from the outside actually, but disconnecting off the outside and bringing it all inward and being able to connect inwardly. And then once we've fostered that connection, we then let go of it. We then distance ourselves from that again, because it's kind of being able to let go of the ego, let go of the personality construct that you have of yourself in your mind, which again takes a step towards oneness and away from duality again, which is something that we've surrounded ourselves with as an ability to be able to understand and fraction things out, so that there is almost always a reason for what goes on. So meditation is another thing that you can practice. The next thing was conscious actions. So I suppose this might be something like random acts of kindness, those sorts of things, knowing that whatever that you give out, you receive back in yourself as well. And again, as I've discussed previously, that's the law of attraction, that's the law of cause and effect. Whatever you get out, you put in that, whatever you put in, you get out. And so being able to be conscious of your choices, being conscious of how your actions affect your life and those around you, all sorts of things, being conscious of everything, being very aware of where you are in that time as well, and how it is that you're feeling and how it is that you're processing, as well as even giving out to people through energy or through time or whatever it is that you do for your work, being able to kind of draw that back in for yourself as well, knowing that you are on this cycle and you are going to need energy tomorrow, and so on. So then see your own oneness. So this is a kind of a gesture of self-love that I practice in my retreats as well, being able to look at yourself and love yourself. But one of the ways you can do that as well is by invoking words, by invoking feeling, by invoking names. So when you stand, this is to be able to see your own oneness, right? When you stand in front of a mirror, pause for a moment and look directly into your eyes. Say silently or aloud, Ahum Brahmasmi. Right? Ahum Brahmasmi, which means I am the universe, or I am the totality. You can say it in English, you can say it in Hindi, you can say whatever you want. It's fine. Ahum Brahmasmi, or I am the universe, or I am the totality, I am source. However it is that you resonate. Practice this at least once a day, or whenever you can catch your reflection in the mirror. So it's almost like every time that you see your physical self, you engage with the knowledge that is your physical self, and that you are greater actually than that which you see. So I like that idea. I really like that idea. I think that's it's a very positive self-image to be instilling in yourself every day, and it's a way of being able to, I suppose, keep the identity of self whilst exploring oneness as well. See the oneness in everything. So I've got a challenge, I suppose, for you. I want you to, next time you go walking, I want you to think for a minute, as you walk down the high street, down from your you know, from your front door down towards your work, wherever it is that you've got about a minute walk in your life. And everything that you lay your eyes onto, I want you to focus on, and I want you to say to yourself, I am that. You know, much like the Vedantic text, much like the Moses Code, looking at something and saying, I am that. You know, I am that. I am that. And being able to do that. Now, you can do that in your mind, just saying those words over and over again, or it's more powerful actually if you say it out loud. I am that. You know, I am that aloe vera plant. I am that sound bowl. I'm just looking at things around me now. I am that book. You know, I recognize that everything that I have my consciousness in is conscious in these things as well. And as strange as it might seem to be kind of saying to your, you know, your pet plant, you know, how you doing? You know, you've been brilliant this week. Like, I've really enjoyed the flowers, or whatever it is. It's being able to recognize and see the oneness in everything. So take a minute of your time, walk down the high street and just look from left to right and stop and contemplate and recognize yourself in it. Okay, that's the key to it all, actually, is recognizing yourself in it, because we can all just walk down the road and think, I am that, I am that, I am that, I am that, you know, but it's the consciousness that comes with it. It's actually looking, studying, reflecting in on it. So it's kind of like that idea of being able to transcend almost out of your body, to be able to look down into it and feel and experience and know a lot more easily because you recognized yourself in it. It's, you know, it's seeing the oneness, everything. It's being able to look around and accept that everything that is something that you've manifested and brought into your life, and that everything that there is oneness. You know, it is omnipotent. It is omniscient. It is omnipresent. It's all powerful, all pervasive. It pervades, permeates and penetrates all things and all hearts. You know, that is not just actually, you know, like kind of an energy, but it's also life and love. No, you know, that's it's a nice idea, and it's an accepting idea. So that is something that I wholeheartedly, you know, applaud anyway. So the next thing is being conscious of talking and saying things. Like I said, like at the beginning of every one of my classes, we put our hands together and we say namaste. And namaste is a greeting that basically allows you to reflect back out to somebody that as much as you meet them and you see them, you know them for who you are, you recognize the divine light in them, and you draw that in for their own experience while you send out your own body towards their experience. So sometimes you can be quite exhausting going in and out of people's bodies with your energetic experience, but it does help to be able to have somebody else's in there. And it really, you know, dependent on the work parental relationship, I find that, you know, some people never even want to go home. Some people are chomping at the bit to be going home and doing their bit or doing their homework or whatever. And so namaste is a really important mantra for the heart center, but also for the whole body, to recognize that when it moves, it can draw energy from the person around you. You can draw energy from the people in your house. You know, there's a long way to go. So see your oneness in everything. Begin to recognize that, you know, that aloe vera plant, I am that aloe vera plant. You know, that aloe vera plant is just as much me as I am it. And that is as it is. You know, it's being able to understand those little things. If you resonate with sound, then obviously we have in yoga, we have the omnipresent sound, which is Om. And traditionally spelled A-U-M, but to my mind, always O-M, Om. And Om is the potential for all sounds, but is itself silent. In every moment of existence, the whole of creation is constantly emerging from the silence of oneness. First sound or vibration emerging from the silence is Om. This vibration then expands into all the souls and vibrations of the universe. Where we chant Om, it draws our awareness back to the dawn of creation and into oneness. So there's a significance behind it all as well. And then this one's finally going on about love. and love being the greatest, most powerful, unifying force in creation. When we are in love, we become one with the object of our love. That is true. I've done that before, just being so self-absorbed by them almost, that you just go anywhere, you do anything, you talk about whatever, you're really, really open with it. That certainly has been something that I have been experiencing for myself as well. So when we are in love, we become one with the object of our love. These powerful quotes that tell the story of a relationship between love and oneness. The Sufi poet Rumi wrote, the lover asked his beloved, do you still love me more than you know me? The beloved replied, I have died to myself, but I've lived for thee. Ram Dass said, oneness is the source of love. Real love is the one celebrating itself as two. So I love that. Like, that makes full sense as to why we are men and women in this world, that we're able to physically explore and experience one another and everything that has to offer. And in the name of love as well, I think it becomes a more gentle experience. It definitely becomes more empowering. I think I'm going to leave it as empowering, to be able to speak to people who have gone before you and who have gone boldly where you feel to tread, and so it goes on. So then the next thing we've got is love. So love is the greatest, most powerful underlying force in creation. When we are in love, we become one with the greatest objects of our love. These inspirational quotes that tell the story of a relationship bonding between love and beast. So the Sufi poet wrote, a lover asked to his beloved, do you have to love yourself more than you love me? The beloved replied, I have died to myself, but gone for thee. So, I think it's so interesting, because as I'm reading through, all I can kind of see are the lines and the alignments between what we're being told philosophically and through workshops and through meetings and through one-on-ones and through everything is the same sort of stuff that's coming out of the books. And I'm literally reading excerpts from like 4 or 5 different books. So it's important to be able to first of all, to be able to read with your son and daughter and be able to enlighten them so that they can go on growing, right? But also to be able to get an idea that the stories that we tell ourselves are a story, are part of a history of oneness as well. Therefore, opening up this idea that if everything is oneness, then everything in the past is now present here, and everything in the future is already present here. And give yourself again that idea that there is no accolade, there is no level of success, there is no one-upmanship, and therefore being able to express love completely from its most base form, from its most unconditional form, and being able to spread that out and being able to share that out. Unconditional love is pure bliss, pure joy, and not something that necessarily all of us receive. So being able to teach that going forward is something that you can give to yourself. Then you become, again, completely independent of any need for anyone or anything else, which is kind of much more healthy, I think, than being dependent on people. So the last message from there is kind of, I suppose, live your life from love, because that is the all-pervading thing that's coming around. No matter what is churning in the background, there is always this message of love coming forward and being realized back in, always kind of that going out and coming back in. And if you're recognizing that you're the universe, being the oneness, and everything will be yours. So it's that sort of thing. So those ideas, those practices were almost 100% reiterated from the Power of One that I was listening to, this Gaia program that I was listening to from David Wilcock. And so exercise 1 through the Law of One says that this is the most nearly centered and usable within your illusion complex. Illusion complex means within our lives, within what we perceive life to be. The moment contains love. That is the lesson or goal of this illusion or density. The exercise is to consciously seek that love in awareness and total and understanding of distortions. The first attempt is the cornerstone. Upon this choosing rests the remainder of the life expectancy of an entity. The second seeking of love within the moment begins the addition. Third seeking powers the fourth powering or doubling the third. As with the previous type of empowerment, there will be some loss of power due to flaws within the seeking in the distortion of insincerity. However, the conscious statement of self to self, of the desire to seek self, is so central an act of will that, as before, the loss of power due to this friction is inconsequential. Okay, so pretty heavy, you know, this is kind of very intellectual stuff coming down. But what I think that it's sort of saying is that actually unconditional love is so very present. Unconditional love is not because it's not conditional on any one thing. It's constant, and it's enabled to be now. You're enabling it to be now. It is that thing. Unconditional love is without condition. Therefore, it is omnipresent. It is omnipotent. It is always there. It is a constant, much like higher consciousness, much like the oneness. It is an inarguable constant. And so exercise 1 that they've given us is really about unconditional love and being able to generate that not just out for other people and everybody and everything else that is experiencing this oneness, but more inherently for yourself. And it goes on to say actually a little bit more on that, because exercise 2, right, let's go to exercise 2 and then we'll touch back in on unconditional love for exercise 3. So exercise 2 is the universe is one being. When a mind-body-spirit complex views another mind-body-spirit complex, see the creator. This is a helpful exercise. So again, it's recognizing that higher consciousness, that oneness is essentially unconditional love as well. And when you looking out at anybody else, when the mind-body-spirit complex views another mind-body-spirit complex, whatever that may be, whether it be another person, whether it be an animal, whether it be a plant, or, you know, whatever it is, something that is conscious and something that is evolving, a mind-body-spirit complex, you recognize that within that, you recognize yourself because you recognize the creator and you recognize that the creator runs and is within, and in fact you are it. And you extend that courtesy, if you like, out to every other conscious being that you come into contact with. You know, you extend that out. You enable them to stand true in themselves, if you like, or their expression of self or their expression of oneness, but you allow yourself to do the same thing at the same time by recognizing that. So then exercise 3 kind of goes back to the idea of unconditional love, not just for somebody outside yourself, not looking out for it, but also looking internally. It says, gaze within a mirror, see the creator. So as you look at yourself, so you see higher consciousness looking back at you. And as you look at yourself and you recognize the physical form, the psychical form, the emotional form, you know, the spiritual form of yourself. So you recognize that all of those things that you see are really just demonstrations of expression and self from the oneness, from the source, from the creator, from, you know, the omnipresent God, if you like. Then exercise 4 is gaze at the creation which lies about the mind-body-spirit complex of each entity and see the creator. So this is the bit again where you kind of have to accept the good and the bad, right? So the deception side of it all, that part that lies, it says, that deception part is the part that you need to accept for yourself as well, because there is a reason for it. It becomes a catalyst. It is what we need to be able to move and grow and shift forward. And that in itself is an acceptance, is a movement into acceptance. It's a movement again into that oneness, and it's a shift forward, therefore. So then the questioner asks, and then the law of one is truly universal in creating a progression towards the eighth density or octave in all galaxies. Is this correct? So I'm like, okay, following along. Okay, 8 densities. Like, I know that we're in the third dimension now. We talk about, talked about through light body and through soul ascension, getting towards like the 5th dimension. And yet, we're talking about getting towards an 8th dimension. And that magic number 8 really resonated with me as well, because in numerology, the number 8 is is eternal. If you look at the number 8, it is ever moving, ever constant, ever shifting, ever circulating almost. If you look at it as so I've drawn it out for you almost as a flat thing, but if you draw it out as a dimension, again, it's that cyclical thing. It's that thing ever present and going on. If I take it into 3D, it is always there. It is a forever. It is a constant movement in shape and in form, and that the law of one is truly universal in creating the progression towards that. So moving towards the the constant movement and the constant repetition, I suppose, of the 8th dimension. Then Ra returns. There are infinite forms, infinite understandings, but the progression is one. So again, it really matters not where you think you're going. It really doesn't matter whether you think you're transcending into a different dimension, whether you're moving forward or backward, whether you're letting go of the concepts of time and space and duality, polarity. Let go of everything and recognize that higher conscious permeates through everything, through all of that and beyond. And that is what you need to be kind of aligning yourself in with and letting yourself believe into, that amazing power of oneness. And I think that really in itself is kind of, I suppose, where I want to end on today, because it's not even about this idea of oneness transcends through everything and everyone. And I suppose the main lessons that I've got out of researching all this for the last week and kind of bringing it together for tonight's show is that if we can do anything in our lives, it's really to let go of the control, and to experience from moment to moment, and to have faith and to trust, and to recognize that whatever we do, however we grow, whatever experience that it is that we have as this kind of sentient human being on this planet, experiencing consciousness in this form, and we've been given this, haven't we? We've been given this way of experiencing. Recognize that in the grand scale of things, not just to the universe as an outside entity, but also as an internal entity, we have nothing to lose from just expressing fully, being fully, and growing as fully as we can. That's exactly why we're here. The meaning of life is to move, is to shift, and is to grow, and is to allow and facilitate that, to allow and to facilitate that for everything else around us, by recognizing that we are and are in everything else around us as well. I hope this show hasn't been kind of too confusing or too kind of spacey and a bit out there. But I think it's important to recognize that when we are taking steps forward in our life, and when challenges arise and we feel like we need to play small, and that actually there is going to be a repercussion for our actions, if you like, and we're concerned and we worry ourselves with whether or not that repercussion is going to be a good thing or a bad thing, whether we're going to be judged or not, recognize that actually none of it even matters, because everything that we do is the catalyst that is needed to shift forward and to move forward and to keep the necessary momentum of learning and of putting out and learning and receiving, of putting experience, if you like, and growth in the same aspect together to be able to shift forward and have realization, which is essentially what higher consciousness wants to achieve, is, we think anyway, a realization of what it actually is. And that will come through constant realization, constant movement, constant growth. And that's kind of where we end up. So just to leave you, I suppose, this evening with, have confidence in everything that you do. Let go of the realms of control, and let go of the idea of ego that holds you into the idea of failure and success. But really failure is the thing that makes us play small. Let go of all that and recognize that actually within you, through you, around you, permeating through everything and every single part of what you have been, what you are now, and what you will be, we are manifesting growth, and that every way that you express that is perfect in its perceived idea of success and failure that we have given it. It's perfect just in that. So enjoy the experience, enjoy the growth. Don't hold on to the emotions, don't hold on to the experiences. Just allow it all to flow. Because when you allow it all to flow, you are allowing more abundance, more growth, more experience, more life in. And surely, if anything, if we're going to go out of this physical experience and this psychical experience and this emotional experience that we have as human beings, it is to be able to take the most from this life. And it is to be able to grab everything that we can from this life and take that forward and feel empowered enough to be able to make mistakes and for it to be okay. Not to be playing small, to be actually living big in life and through life, because that in its essence is the expression of life, and that life is a higher consciousness, and life is a pervading universal energy that is constantly wanting to realize itself and move forward, and that every single one of us has a very vital and unique way of being able to help that move forward. Thank you so much for being with me tonight. Namaste. This is Kirsty Bentley Taylor for This Happy Guru. Good night.
Humanity has been on an epic journey of discovery, learning the truth about the world we live in. New discoveries about the true origins of humanity, ancient history, free energy, as well as the systematic corruption of world governments are now on the forefront of our daily reality. Is the world headed towards destruction based on control and power? Or is an opportunity now being presented to shift and uplift into a higher consciousness? My name is Mel V, co-founder and creative director of Conscious Consumer Network, an independent broadcast network that was launched on the 1st of January 2015. In the last 3 years, Conscious Consumer Network has broadcast over 2,800 shows in multiple languages, featuring guests from across the world, whilst creating media that is aimed at the creation of a free, fair, peaceful, just, sustainable world. Conscious Consumer Network provides full training and an interactive support network for all broadcasters, and we are always looking for inspiring and educational content.
Hi, this is Lainey Liberty.
And this is Miro Siegel.
In 2018, Conscious Consumer Network has expanded to multiple broadcast locations, increasing our availability and reach across the world, remaining on the cutting edge of independent media. If we wish to create a better world, we must first create better media, geared towards real education instead of indoctrination.
You guys really are what changing the world is going to be about. It's educating kids at a grassroots level.
Having become a pillar of stability in the turbulent world of independent media, we have even more going on in 2018. Conscious Consumer Network is a publicly funded network, and we rely on all of you to keep us on the air. Show your support for independent media by donating to our 2018 Network Support Fund. Dare to seek a better world. Support independent media.